Fungi. The fungi constitute a unique kingdom of heterotrophic organisms. They show a great diversity in morphology and habitat. You must have seen fungi on a moist bread and rotten fruits. The common mushroom you eat in ch-2s are also fungi. White spots seen on mustard leaves are due to a parasitic fungus. Some unicellular fungi, e.g., yeast, are used to make bread and beer. Other fungi cause diseases in plants and animals. Wheat rust causing Puccinia is an important example. Some are the source of antibiotics, e.g., penicillium. Fungi are cosmopolitan and occur in air, water, soil and on animals and plants. They prefer to grow in warm and humid places. Have you ever wondered why we keep food in the refrigerator? Yes, it is to prevent food from going bad due to bacterial or fungal infections. With the exception of yeasts, which are unicellular, fungi are filamentous. Their bodies consist of long, slender thread-like structures called hyphae. The network of hyphae is known as mycelium. Some hyphae are continuous tubes filled with multinucleated cytoplasm, these are called choanocytic hyphae. Others have septae or cross walls in their hyphae. The cell walls of fungi are composed of chitin and polysaccharides. Most fungi are heterotrophic and absorb soluble organic matter from dead substrates and hence are called saprophytes. Those that depend on living plants and animals are called parasites. They can also live as symbionts in association with algae as lichens and with roots of higher plants as mycorrhiza. Reproduction in fungi can take place by vegetative means, fragmentation, fission and budding. Asexual reproduction is by spores. Called conidia or sporangiospores or zoospores, and sexual reproduction is by oospores, ascospores and basidiospores. The various spores are produced in distinct structures called fruiting bodies. The sexual cycle involves the following three steps: fusion of protoplasms between two motile or non-motile gametes, called plasmigamy. Fusion of two nuclei called karyogamy. Meiosis in zygote resulting in haploid spores. When a fungus reproduces sexually, two haploid hyphae of compatible mating types come together and fuse. In some fungi, the fusion of two haploid cells immediately results in diploid cells 2n. However, in other fungi, ascomycetes and basidiomycetes, an intervening dikaryotic stage n+n, i.e., two nuclei per cell, occurs. Such a condition is called a dikaryon and the phase is called dikaryophase of fungus. Later, the parental nuclei fuse and the cells become diploid. The fungi form fruiting bodies in which reduction division occurs, leading to formation of haploid spores. The morphology of the mycelium, mode of spore formation and fruiting bodies form the basis for the division of the kingdom into various classes. 2.3.1 Phycomycetes. Members of phycomycetes are found in aquatic habitats and on decaying wood in moist and damp places or as obligate parasites on plants. The mycelium is aseptate and choanocytic. Asexual reproduction takes place by zoospores motile or by aplanospores non-motile. These spores are endogenously produced in sporangium. A zygospore is formed by fusion of two gametes. These gametes are similar in morphology, isogamous or dissimilar, anisogamous or oogamous. Some common examples are mucor, figure 2.5, a Rhizopus, the bread mold mentioned earlier, and albago, the parasitic fungi on mustard. Mustard. 2.3.2 Ascomycetes, commonly known as sac fungi. The ascomycetes are mostly multicellular, e.g., penicillium, or rarely unicellular, e.g., yeast Saccharomyces. They are saprophytic, decomposers, parasitic or coprophilous, growing on dung. Mycelium. S-branched and septate. The asexual spores are conidia produced exogenously on the special mycelium called conidiophores. Conidia on germination produce mycelium. Sexual spores are called ascospores, which are produced endogenously in sac-like Acacia, singular ascus. These Acacia are arranged in different types of fruiting bodies called ascocarps. Some examples are Aspergillus, figure 2.5b, claviceps and Neurospora. Neurospora is used extensively in biochemical and genetic work. Many members like morels and truffles are edible and are considered delicacies. 2.3.3 Basidiomycetes. Commonly known forms of basidiomycetes are mushrooms, fungi or puffballs. They grow in soil, on logs and tree stumps and in living plant bodies as parasites, e.g., rusts and smuts. The mycelium is branched and septate. The asexual spores are generally not found, but vegetative reproduction by fragmentation is common. The sex organs are absent, but plasmogamy is brought about by fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells of different strains or genotypes. The resultant structure is dikaryotic, which ultimately gives rise to basidium. Karyogamy and meiosis take place in the basidium, producing 4 basidiospores. The basidiospores are exogenously produced on the basidium plural. Basidia. The basidia are arranged in fruiting bodies called basidiocarps. Some common members are agaricus mushroom, figure 2.5c, ustilago, smut, and Puccinia, rust fungus. 2.3.4 Deuteromycetes. Commonly known as imperfect fungi because only the asexual or vegetative phases of these fungi are known. When the sexual forms of these fungi were discovered, they were moved into classes they rightly belong to. It is also possible that the asexual and vegetative stage have been given one name and placed under Deuteromycetes, and the sexual stage another, and placed under another class. Later, when the linkages were established, the fungi were correctly identified and moved out of Deuteromycetes. Once perfect sexual stages of members of Deuteromycetes were discovered, they were often moved to Ascomycetes and Basidiomycetes. The Deuteromycetes reproduce only by asexual spores known as conidea. The mycelium is septate and branched. Some members are saprophytes or parasites, while a large number of them are decomposers of litter and help in mineral cycling. Some examples are Alternaria, Calatotrichum and Trichoderma. 4. Kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Plantae includes all eukaryotic chlorophyll-containing organisms commonly called plants. A few members are partially heterotrophic, such as the insectivorous plants or parasites. Bladderwort and Venus flytrap are examples of insectivorous plants, and Cuscuta is a parasite. The plant cells have an eukaryotic structure with prominent chloroplasts and cell wall mainly made of cellulose. You will study the eukaryotic cell structure in detail in Chapter 8. Plantae includes algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Life cycle of plants has 2 distinct phases, the diploid sporophytic and the haploid gametophytic, that alternate with each other. The lengths of the haploid and diploid phases, and whether these phases are free-living or dependent on others, vary among different groups in plants. This phenomenon is called alternation of generation. You will study further details of this kingdom in Chapter 3. 2.5 Kingdom Animalia. This kingdom is characterized by heterotrophic eukaryotic organisms that are multicellular and their cells lack cell walls. They directly or indirectly depend on plants for food. They digest their food in an internal cavity and store food reserves as glycogen or fat. Their mode of nutrition is holozoic, by ingestion of food. They follow a definite growth pattern and grow into adults that have a definite shape and size. Higher forms show elaborate sensory and neuromotor mechanism. Most of them are capable of locomotion. The sexual reproduction is by copulation of male and female followed by embryological development. Salient features of various phyla are described in Chapter 4. 2.6 Viruses, Viroids, Priones and lichens. In the 5-kingdom classification of Whittaker there is no mention of lichens and some acellular organisms like viruses, viroids and prions. These are briefly introduced here. All of us who have suffered the ill effects of common cold or flu know what effects viruses can have on us, even if we do not associate it with our condition. Viruses did not find a place in classification since they are not considered truly living, if we understand living as those organisms that have a cell structure. The viruses are non-cellular organisms that are characterized by having an inert crystalline structure outside the living cell. Themselves, killing the host. Once they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of the host cell to replicate themselves, killing the host. Would you call viruses living or non-living? Virus means venom or poisonous fluid. Dmitry Ivanovsky 1892 recognized certain microbes as causal organism of the mosaic disease of tobacco, figure 2.6a. These were found to be smaller than bacteria because they passed through bacteria-proof filters. M.W. Bajeranek 1898 demonstrated that the extract of the infected plants of tobacco could cause infection in healthy plants and named the new pathogen, virus, and called the fluid as Contagium vivum fluidum, infectious living fluid. W. M. Stanley 1935 showed that viruses could be crystallized and crystals consist largely of proteins. They are inert outside their specific host cell. Viruses are obligate parasites. In addition to proteins, viruses also contain genetic material, that could be either RNA or DNA. No virus contains both RNA and DNA. A virus is a nucleoprotein and the genetic material is infectious. In general, viruses that infect plants have single-stranded RNA and viruses that infect animals have either single or double-stranded RNA or double-stranded DNA. Bacterial viruses or bacteriophages, viruses that infect the bacteria, are usually double-stranded DNA viruses, figure 2.6b. The protein coat called capsid, made of small subunits called capsimers, protects the nucleic acid. These capsimers are arranged in helical or polyhedral geometric forms. Viruses cause diseases like mumps, smallpox, herpes and influenza. AIDS in humans is also caused by a virus. In plants, the symptoms can be mosaic formation, leaf rolling and curling, yellowing and vein clearing, dwarfing and stunted growth. Viroids. In 1971, Theo Dunner discovered a new infectious agent that was smaller than viruses and caused potato spindle tuber disease. It was found to be a free RNA. It lacked the protein coat that is found in viruses, hence the name viroid. The RNA of the viroid was of low molecular weight. Prions. In modern medicine, certain infectious neurological diseases were found to be transmitted by an agent consisting of abnormally folded protein. The agent was similar in size to viruses. These agents were called prions. The most notable diseases caused by prions are bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, commonly called mad cow disease in cattle, and its analogous variant CR Jacob disease, CJD, in humans. Lichens. Lichens are symbiotic associations, i.e. mutually useful associations, between algae and fungi. The algal component is known as phycobiont and fungal component as mycobiont, which are autotrophic and heterotrophic, respectively. Algae prepare food for fungi and fungi provide shelter and absorb mineral nutrients and water for its partner. So close is their association that if one saw a lichen in nature, one would never imagine that they had two different organisms within them. Lichens are very good pollution indicators, they do not grow in polluted areas.